You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and today is the final episode reading of our three-parter novella from my book Parallax, published by Spinifex Press. It is the long story, or the novella, called The Last Speaker. I hope you've enjoyed it in its comic and tragic dimensions. I won't say more about it. I'll let it speak for itself. And then, hereafter, we will be taking a break from literature for a while, returning to the news, because it's an election year, you know. I'm sure you've noticed. And there's a lot to say about that. So, that's coming up. But for now, we've got the Last Speaker Part 3. And so that I don't have to interrupt the reading of it, I will, as usual, take a break now, and then we'll go right into it. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
You may recall that the section I read last week, part 2 of The Last Speaker, ended with the word worker leaping out of bed joyously in having remembered and semi-dreamt that not all of the actual last speaker's people were dead, or that there were some who were unalive, and so he could perhaps track him from that perspective. And so he leaps out of bed, and he sends people scurrying for her, and he hurries back to the city, grinning to think how he still retains powerful connections. And it ends, indeed he did, so it took nearly a day and a half before a slovenly middle-aged woman was brought to see him. Now we will pick up with The Last Speaker, Part 3, the final installment. She shuffled along, hunching slightly. Whether from lameness or servility, he couldn't tell. Her skin was sallow. She snivelled and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Her coarseness was the opposite of the last speaker's effortless elegance. The word worker leafed through her documents. Surprisingly, she looked much older. She had only 34 summers. Poor. 7 children. Abandoned by the mate, a male. Charged 4 times with public drunkenness. One of those who had fallen through a gap in Unity's social programs. One of those the last speaker had described as being dismissed from the clan because of inability to find a story or a self. The word worker ordered food brought and watched her gulp it down, shooting frightened glances at him as she ate. Slowly, no need to rush, he counseled, wrestling to contain his own impatience. I will help you. I will send you home with more food, with wealth even. Here, he dangled a purse of coins. Grunting, she grabbed at it. She seemed almost feral. Not yet, he snapped, yanking away the purse. You help me first. I want you to translate something from the language of the people of stories. The woman flinched as if struck. Then she scowled and shook her head fiercely. Yes, he said firmly, they were once your people. Please, she cringed, whimpering in unifier. I cannot remember. I cannot speak it. I know you can. Surely you remember enough of it. I need only 4 sentences. I cannot, she whined. It is not permitted. I say it is. Silent, she stared down at her hands, curled as fists in her lap. Do you know where your people are? She twisted the dirty, tarnished chain around her neck. He reached out and grasped it, to examine a letter dangling there. It was a U. For Unifier? Surely not. Unity had never issued such identification. Then he got it. Unalive. Your people are unalive. She nodded. Not like you, cast out, truly unalive. Forever, all of them. She nodded, unsurprised, her glance flickering around the room, seeking a way out. You know that? How do you know they are all unalive? How? She mumbled. What did you say? A person hears things. Ah. He was curious, but the original curiosity overrode the new one. So then you know there is no one left from the people of stories to blame you for helping me. They are all gone. But I am here, and I am generous. There will be more, he jangled the purse, of this. Your children would never lack food again. You would never lack wine. A quick glare at him before she jerked her head down again. Something gleamed in those eyes that recalled another gaze. Black water at moonset, deep enough to drown in, carefully lidded. He flushed with a shame he hadn't felt since, but he couldn't stop. Not being able to stop turned the shame to anger. Suddenly he was yelling, Tiason, Aime, Isa, Kai. He hurled each word at her like a stone. Leton, Aina, Asa, Quay, Etia, Jaheto, Aina, Jahet, Odeira, Aime, Ne, Tialat. She gasped. He hunched forward, trying to follow the twitch of expressions playing rapidly across her features. Shock, fear, astonishment, something connecting. Was it recognition? Cunning? Then a blank. Lidded. Closed. Tiason aime isakai, leton aina osakwe, etia jeheto aina jehet, odera aime nehitielet, he repeated relentlessly. She scrutinized the air into which he had released the phrases. In a hurry now, he jingled the purse in her face. Without warning, she shoved back her chair and lunged to stand face to face with him. I know what you offer, she shouted. I am human. I am not a beast. He was taken aback, but he rallied. Then why do you hesitate? She slumped again, retreating to the chair. It has been so long a time. She bit her lip. If you do this, I will help you and your children. I will protect you. She sat, head in hands, fingers covering her eyes, as if trying to not see something. Children need protection, don't they? He went on. They can fall ill, they can... One never knows. Harm can come so easily to children. Stunned, he heard the threat in his own words. Disgust rose in his throat. He felt dizzy and nauseated, but revulsion couldn't compete with the famishment to know. She stared at him. Finally she spoke, barely above a whisper, in a voice hoarse with fear and hatred. I cannot get all the words. It has been years. I've forgotten so much. But I think I can give you The meaning? The general meaning will do. Yes, give me that. Another long look, blinking slowly, once, twice. She drew a deep breath. It is a verse. It is, the phrases are directions. Eager, he leaned forward. What, like a map? Tell me. Haltingly, she began. Where there is a tall hill. This hill wears ice and snow. Tiason Aime Isakai. It is a journey. You must go there. Then something about shadows. The hill is so tall it casts a near valley in shadow year long. You must find this place, it says. Find this valley where no sunlight falls. Leton aina osakwe. In this valley, a crop is ripening, one like no other crop. Etya jeheto aina jehet. Eto jahao. Jeheto aina jehet. She repeated. She paused, her eyes shining. A furtive smile, barely a tremor, graced the corners of her mouth. I have found... What? Tell me, what is it? He demanded. Her expression masked itself. Words, found my words, she said. The words taste sweet in my mouth. Yes, go on. In this place, you must, gather, harvest this crop. It will feed you a clue. Yes, oh yes. Odiara aime nehi tilet. This will feed you the answer, she corrected herself, finishing triumphantly. Feed you what you need to know. She exhaled. There. That is all. That is the whole of it. A long silence followed while he turned the words over in his mind, and she watched him turning them. Tall hill, ice and snow. Must be the northern mountains, he muttered. Has to be. Then a valley. Find a shadowed valley with a ripening crop despite the shade. The word worker exploded into a blur of movement. He rushed to the door and shouted for his aides. They came at a run, and he ordered them to assemble a traveling party for departure to the north early the next morning. Then he gave himself over to obsessive pacing back and forth. Harvest this strange crop. It will feed me the answer. The answer! It will feed me what I need to know. He stopped in his tracks. It's a message to me from the last speaker. He began pacing again. Meanwhile, the secretaries bustled in and out, packing and being generally officious. In the furor, he suddenly noticed that the woman had slipped away. The last he remembered of her was the look on her face as she watched him absorb the translation. She'd looked satisfied, happy almost. It was tasting the sweetness of her language, she said, but he suspected it was more like anticipation of payment. Then he saw the purse, still lying on the table. She must have been so frightened by the commotion that she fled without taking it. He would send it on to her, he thought, but after the journey. The journey was now everything. Early the next morning, he and his attendants departed. He pushed the traveling party hard, despite his companion's complaints. His old bones were so weary that only fanatic curiosity still knitted them together. But when he and his group arrived at the northern mountains, it was merely to face the next question: where to go from there? They interviewed villagers in the foothills, some of whom acknowledged having known the people of the stories when they'd passed through in the old days. But they all claimed ignorance of any shadowed valley, until a young man announced himself as not superstitious and in need of coin, and lurched forward tipsily. He offered to lead them to a site that, according to him, everyone knew about but avoided. It was less than a day's walk distant. The word worker would have left immediately, but his team all but mutinied. He couldn't sleep with excitement. At dawn they set out. When they reached the place, the word worker found it vaguely familiar, as if from a dream. Had the last speaker shown it to him during their story journey? Looking down from the heights, he saw a dreary plain at the bottom of a gully, so ringed with mountains that the sun touched it for less than an hour in summer, and not at all in winter. Daylight down there was a yellowish gray. There were no buildings, not even a shepherd's hut, no ruins, no road. Nothing was to be found here except wind combing the grasses of a wide expanse in perpetual twilight. But the last speaker had mentioned unearthing a story. Whatever was here must be buried. And as the expedition descended, drawing nearer, the word worker saw the mounds. Reaching the valley floor, he directed his men to dig. Some peoples practiced raised earth agriculture. Perhaps something had once been planted there, something he was meant to harvest, or perhaps some treasure, not of gold, he didn't value riches, but some treasure of wisdom, the answer to what he needed to know. He paced the site where the men were digging, reciting the phrases under his breath for luck. There was a shout, then quickly a second. The bodies began to surface, one after another. These were burial mounds. Impossible, Tyak thought. Nomadic clans burned or buried their dead along the routes of their wandering. He felt the clammy air settle on his skin. In Kurgan's burial mounds. But still, he thought, his mind racing to escape what his eyes were seeing, still never so many in one place. There might be a solitary small mound by the side of a well-traveled route, but this was a field of Kurgans. The whole valley was a burial ground. This was not the nomadic way. Yet here were the bodies. Some mounds had only one, others 3 or 4. Some gave up a pair. More than 200 the men estimated after exhuming the first 70. Then they refused to continue the dig. The smell was too foul, the sights too hideous. Furthermore, they said they had unearthed enough to perceive the pattern of horror. All the corpses were in approximately the same stages of advanced decomposition, 6 to 7 years, and had all died the same way. It took only a glance to see from their gutted chests that they had been murdered. Each had been killed by a violent stab directly into the heart. The knowledge came slowly to the word worker. It came in small pulses. It came like poison working its way through the bloodstream to the heart. It came like the first gray streaks of daylight reaching toward a condemned man being escorted to his non-existence. The unusual youth of the last speaker. His final words. This was my story. I was designated the last speaker. I drew the lot. The double-edged blade of polished brass hanging from the tent pole. The dagger the word worker had taken with him that now glinted on display in his private library. The supremely gentle, wise, naive young man, so civilized he could not survive without his own voice. That man had murdered these people. Children, women, men, entire families, scores of them. The field was soaked with death. Patches of turned soil were dark red, not brown. The stench hung thick as the silence, putrefying the air. There, that one, the blood and mud-stained ribbon in what was left of its hair. This one, still in swaddling clothes. Here was the crop that had been ripening, the answer to what he'd been so sure he needed to know. The field was a massacre site, sown with ritual murder. How had the last speaker buried them all, or had they dug for him? As their numbers dwindled, had they still helped him one by one to cover the beloved flesh of their lovers and children and parents before he covered their own? I drew the lot to fulfill the extinction of a people gone mad, an entire people who chose to die rather than live unfree to utter themselves. The word worker could not move. I loved him, he thought, like a son. I loved a murderer, a mass killer. He screamed, startling the workman. He fell to his knees in the reeking soil. He pounded his head with his fists. Life, he whimpered over and over. Life matters more than stories. But there was that soft voice whispering in his mind. Life is stories, Onesianer. Only stories. He collapsed. They bore him back to the city. There they nursed his failing body, but they could not heal his mind. I loved a mass killer, that mind chanted. He knew I came to love him, but he lied to me. Or did he? I thought he grew to trust me. Yet the knife was there all along, but he didn't use it. Why didn't he murder me in the tent? Did he care for me? Inside that mind, inside that story, echoed the fourth phrase, Odiara, Aime, Nehe, Tilet, the answer to feed you what you need to know. The last speaker was addressing me, he chanted in his mind. Is it more evil to eradicate the existence of a people than to erase their means of speaking that existence? Are the two the same? They bound his hands to keep him from hitting his head, but they could not bind his thoughts. What did he need to know? Who had he become? A fool? Manipulated into thinking that a savage, yes, this was savagery. These people were savages, was wise and profound. You could not trust them after all. Wait, then how could he trust the woman's translation? Hadn't she grown angry, shouting at him? Then she had smiled almost, but surely that was in anticipation of her money. Yet she had not taken it. Devious, she must have cheated him somehow. Perhaps after years of being unalive among strangers, she truly had forgotten the language. But then, could she have invented meanings for the phrases? Still, the directions she'd given him did lead to the burial grounds of her people. Or had she got that knowledge some other way, then grafted it onto the phrases? One hears things, she had mumbled, and that strange radiance in her eyes. The words taste sweet in the mouth, she said. I have found, she said. What if she had finally found her story? What if she had made the whole thing up? He became convinced of her perfidy. Then he became envious that she found her story, if she had. Envious that she had found herself. But his mind ricocheted back to its search. Had those 4 phrases been a gift to a friend, a gesture of trust as he'd assumed all this time? Or were they a prisoner's curse on his jailer? Then again, wouldn't the last speaker have realized that the word worker eventually must remember there were still living clan members, the unalive among the sedentary, bereft of stories, equally unable to speak their native tongue or to forget it? Deep and deeper the arguments etched grooves in his brain, until they could think themselves, despite his attempts to block them, get free, end it. But the ending happens throughout the story, he remembered. Now, having dug up bodies, he dug up stories. From anything the last speaker had told him, from his own past, trying to make a line or image fit, trying to open what was buried in syllables and sounds. His nurses unbound him because he no longer pounded his head. He pounded those 4 phrases, muttering instead, "Let me in, let me in, let me in." He no longer responded to the honorific name minister, or to the word worker, or even to his own name Tyak. He called himself once Yarner. He listened to the lines of the verse in the original in his mind, night and day, his lips moving soundlessly with them. Then, staring out the window one autumn twilight, he understood. He was one of those unable to find his story or his self. He was in danger of being unalive. To keep from being unalive, he must invent what he could not discover. And suddenly, how easy it was! As he wrote, he recognized the words as the message the last speaker meant for him. Tiasone aime isa kai. I was from the first who I would become. Leton aina osa quai. Claiming to love those I struck dumb. Etya jaheto aina jahet. It was I who plunged the blade through the breath. Odiara aime nehe tilet. To escape my own story as the bringer of death. That was the day he proclaimed himself by a new name. I am the first speaker, he said proudly to his nurses. They had no idea what the old man meant, or that those were the last words in unifier anyone would ever hear him speak. After that he sat staring at nothing, his lips working silently. Visitors, friends, word workers, former students, shook their heads with sorrow to see him this way, reminding each other in hushed tones how brilliant he had once been, how eloquent. One morning, a few months later, the nurses, unable to wake him, reported that he had died peacefully in his sleep, though how they were certain of that none could have said. They found him clutching a piece of paper on which he had scrawled his verse, prefaced by the message, "Chisel these lines on my gravestone." This was my story. The nurses turned the text over to the ministry, naturally. Officials there decided it was tragically inappropriate, though not surprising, considering the old man's state of mind before he died. Instead, they commissioned a marble monument shaped like an open book resting on a pedestal to honor his lifetime of service to the unity government. On the day and at the hour the monument was to be dedicated, the entire High Unifying Council assembled in tribute before moving on to a lavish ceremonial luncheon. Across the city, in a bare room, a woman sat rocking a hungry child on her lap. The little one whimpered, peevish and restless, tugging at the plain silver chain around the woman's throat. But gradually he grew quiet, his somber stare fixed on her, while he imitated her soft chant, trying to learn it. Tiason aime isa kai, letan aina osa quai, etya jeheto aina jahet, odiara aime ne tilet. To live is to move at rest or play, at home in motion, and free to say, nothing to lose and little to keep. tell me a story before I sleep. Odiara aime dialect, the child repeated in his baby lisp. Odiara aime dialect. It was an old nursery rhyme. Simply that. You have been listening to The Last Speaker, Part 3, the novella of mine which appears in the book Parallax, published by Spinifex Press. I hope you enjoyed hearing it. And next we will be tackling the election year, otherwise known as laughingly real life. And that's our show for this week. We'll be on hiatus next week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.